I'd only lived in the house for 3 weeks. It was the kind of neighborhood that looked peaceful on the surface, lined with identical mailboxes and polite, clipped hedges. The kind where people waved but didn't linger, where porch lights glowed, but the houses stayed quiet. The kind of place you move to when you need to start over, and all you want is silence. That night, the silence broke. It started small, a sound soft and quick, like fingers brushing glass. I paused mid-sip of lukewarm tea and turned toward the living room window. Nothing. But I knew what I heard. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the branches. It was something closer, more intentional. I stood and crossed the room slowly, trying not to breathe too loudly. My socks barely made a sound against the hardwood. The lights inside reflected back at me in the glass, making it hard to see anything outside. Just my own face, pale, tense, too tired. I reached for the lamp and flicked it off. There it was again. Scratch, scratch. I stumbled backwards, so fast I knocked into the armchair behind me. Okay, I whispered, half to myself, half to whatever was out there. My voice sounded small. Okay, no. I backed away and grabbed my phone, hands shaking. I dialed 911 before I could talk myself out of it. The operator answered in a crisp tone, and I tried to keep mine steady. I think someone's trying to break in, I said. I heard something at the window, scratching, like someone's testing the lock. She asked my address, my name, if I could see anyone, if I was alone. Yes, I said. Yes to all of it. We've dispatched a unit to your location. Please stay on the line and stay somewhere safe. I sat down behind the kitchen island, crouched low, holding the phone like a lifeline. My heart was beating in my ears. I kept staring at the window, half expecting to see a face pressed against the glass. But nothing came. Still, I didn't feel safe. I hadn't felt safe in months, if I'm honest. After the breakup, I told myself I needed peace. I needed space to breathe. I packed up my life and moved out here to this perfectly quiet street where nothing happened. I was tired of being someone's afterthought. Tired of pretending I was okay. But now, alone in the dark, every decision I'd made felt like a mistake. The lights flickered. I froze. The kitchen light buzzed, dimmed, then steadied again. I gripped the edge of the counter. Come on, I muttered. Don't you dare go out on me. Another sound, this time from the back door. A soft creak, like pressure on wood. My stomach dropped. Where are they? I whispered into the phone. They're en route, the operator replied. Should be there any moment. Just then, knock. I flinched so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Another knock. Then a voice, muffled but steady. Police. Is anyone inside? I scrambled to the front door, peeking through the peephole. A man stood on the porch, tall, broad-shouldered, in a dark patrol uniform. His badge gleamed under the porch light. One hand rested on his belt near his radio. The other held a flashlight at his side. His posture was calm, not aggressive. Alert, but not threatening. I took a breath and opened the door. He looked at me, really looked, and gave the smallest nod. You called in a possible break-in? He asked. His voice was low, grounded. Not cold, not disinterested. Just controlled. I felt myself steady slightly in response. Yeah, I heard something at the window, then again by the back door. I didn't see anyone, but I trailed off. His eyes scanned the porch, then me. They were a soft hazel, not the kind of eyes you'd expect from someone trained to be intimidating. I'll check the perimeter, he said. Stay inside. Lock the door behind me. And without waiting for my answer, he turned toward the steps, disappearing into the night. I closed the door. My hand hovered over the lock. And then I turned it, slowly. Something in me shifted. I wasn't sure if it was safety or just the feeling of no longer being completely alone. But for the first time in weeks, it felt like someone had stepped into the silence I'd been drowning in. Someone who saw me. And I had no idea what would happen next. When he returned to my door after checking the yard, there was something different about him. He knocked with urgency. His arrival was calm but confident. He didn't say much, just gave me a brief look and a nod, one that said, I've got this. He stepped into my house like he'd done it 1,000 times. Not with ownership, but with purpose. His boots were damp from the dew outside, and they squeaked softly on the floorboards as he moved. "Mind if I do a full sweep of the inside?" he asked. "Please," I replied, stepping back. "I haven't touched anything." He raised his flashlight, not in a showy way, just a smooth motion, and began with the front hallway. The beam danced along door frames, over shelves, and across picture frames that were still half empty. I stood awkwardly by the door, watching him work. He wasn't in a rush. He checked closets, behind doors, even the pantry. Every motion was methodical, trained, sure, but not cold. He was gentle. I hadn't expected that. He moved through my space like someone who respected it, like someone who knew what fear felt like and didn't want to add to mine. When he reached the bedroom, he turned slightly and gave me a look, asking permission. I nodded. "Go ahead." He stepped inside. I couldn't help but watch him. The way his uniform stretched across his back, the quiet way he moved. I wasn't trying to stare, not really, but there was something about him. He felt solid. And for the first time all night, I didn't feel like I was about to collapse inward. He returned a few minutes later, flicking off his flashlight. "Back door secure. Looks like someone tried to get in, but got spooked before they made it far. You said you didn't see anyone?" "No," I said, hugging my arms around myself. "Just heard scratching, and something heavy, like a footstep." He nodded. "Could have been someone testing doors. Happens more than people think. Sometimes kids. Sometimes more." My chest tightened. "Great." He studied me for a moment. Really studied me. Then his voice softened a notch. "You live alone?" I nodded. "Moved here a few weeks ago. Thought a quiet neighborhood would mean fewer surprises." He half smiled. It was the kind of smile that only lifted one corner of his mouth, just enough to feel real. Sometimes the quiet ones hide the weirdest stuff. We both chuckled a little awkwardly, but the tension broke. Even for a moment. "I'm Officer Davis," he said suddenly, holding out his hand. "Jordan." I took it. His grip was firm but warm. "Nice to meet you under terrifying circumstances," I said, managing a weak laugh. He interrupted gently. "Your name came through dispatch. Don't worry, you're not under investigation." "Good to know," I said, and for the first time all night, I cracked a genuine smile. There was a pause, not uncomfortable, just still. He glanced at the couch. "You shook up?" I nodded. "Yeah. Honestly, yeah." He took a breath, then said something I didn't expect. "I can stay a bit if you want, just to make sure you feel okay. I'm done with my calls for the night." I blinked. "Wait, seriously?" He shrugged. "Most people don't call the cops unless something really scared them. I've seen it. People say they're fine, then spend the next 3 hours jumping at their own fridge. It's late. You're alone. I've got some time." There was no pity in his tone. No pressure either. Just care. The offer felt strangely personal, almost intimate, but not inappropriate, like someone offering an umbrella in the rain. He didn't owe me anything, but he wanted to help. "I mean, I don't want to keep you or—" "It's no trouble," he cut in gently. I nodded slowly. "Okay. Yeah, I'd appreciate that." He gave me a short nod and moved to sit down. I followed him into the kitchen. "Coffee?" I asked. "Or tea?" He looked at the ceiling like he was considering a very serious question. "Tea? But only if it's not herbal. I need something that tastes like dirt and regret." I laughed. Really laughed, and shook my head. "Black tea it is." I turned to the kettle and filled it, hands a little steadier now. I could feel him behind me, watching the room, taking everything in, but not in a judgmental way. More like curiosity or concern. When I turned back around, he was sitting at the small kitchen table, arms resting on the wood, relaxed but alert. I set the mugs down and we sat together. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore, just quiet. Two people existing in the same space. "You do this often?" I asked. "Stay after calls?" "Not often," he replied, blowing on his tea. "But sometimes. Only when it feels right." And tonight felt right. He looked up at me. Those eyes again, Hazel, steady. You seemed like you needed someone. I swallowed. It wasn't the words that hit me. It was the way he said them. Like he knew what it was to need someone and not have them. Like he'd sat in his own kitchen once, heart racing, waiting for a knock on the door that never came. We sipped our tea in silence. His badge caught the warm kitchen light. His presence, unassuming, quiet, started to fill the empty corners of the room. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't movie magic. But it felt like the first time in a long time that someone saw me without looking through me, and it made all the difference. The tea had gone lukewarm between us, but neither of us moved to get up. Jordan sat across the small table, hands around the mug like it was grounding him. His uniform looked heavier now in the kitchen light, as if the night itself had settled onto his shoulders. I didn't know what to say next, but I didn't feel like I needed to fill the silence either. Still, something about him made me want to. "You hungry?" I asked, breaking the quiet. I haven't eaten anything since lunch, and I'm not great at being scared on an empty stomach. He looked up and tilted his head. "What's on the menu?" I grinned faintly. "Well, I have peanut butter, instant noodles, and enough eggs to start a small farm. Gourmet, obviously." He let out a low chuckle. "Sold. Anything that isn't gas station jerky is fine by me." I stood and opened a cabinet, grabbing some bread and eggs. "You cook a lot?" he asked as I cracked the eggs into the pan. "Trying to," I replied. "When I moved here, I figured I'd finally do all the adult things. Cook for myself, water plants, maybe start jogging." I looked over my shoulder. The plants are dead, and the jogging never started. He smiled. "You're doing better than me." The first raindrops started tapping against the kitchen window, soft at first, then steadier. The kind of rain that made everything else feel farther away. Jordan turned his head slightly toward the sound, listening. "Night shifts like this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Sometimes. Most nights it's quiet. Too quiet. Just me in the car listening to static on the radio. You don't get calls like mine?" "Not really. People sleep through noises. Or ignore them. You actually picking up the phone, that stood out." I paused. I didn't want to at first. Thought maybe I was being dramatic. But something didn't feel right. He nodded. "You trusted your gut. That's not dramatic. That's smart." The eggs sizzled in the pan as I plated them with toast. I slid a plate in front of him, then sat back down with mine. "You didn't have to stay," I said quietly. "I know you said it wasn't a big deal, but it kind of is." He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me for a moment, then said, "It didn't feel right to leave. You reminded me of someone." I raised an eyebrow gently. "Someone?" He hesitated. "My brother. Years ago, he used to get these awful night terrors. Would call me sometimes at 2, 3 in the morning. Wouldn't say anything, just breathing into the phone. That kind of fear doesn't go away when you hang up. You have to sit with someone through it." I swallowed. "Is he gone?" "Yeah," he said simply. "Not from the terrors. Just life, I guess." I looked down at my plate. "I'm sorry." He shook his head. "It was a while ago. Still shows up sometimes, though. Usually on nights like this." The rain grew heavier, a soft white noise that filled the room. I looked at him and said, "I moved here to get away from someone too. My ex. We were together for 5 years. Lived together. Built something I thought was real. What happened?" I gave a soft laugh that didn't reach my eyes. "I found out I was the placeholder. He'd already fallen for someone else. I guess he just didn't know how to let me go. Or maybe didn't want to be the bad guy." Jordan's jaw tightened just slightly. "I hate that kind of betrayal. It leaves you questioning your own memories." "Exactly," I said. "Like, was any of it real?" We felt quiet for a while, just eating. The food wasn't fancy, but it warmed my chest in a way that had nothing to do with calories. "I've been on my own since," I said eventually. "Not really by choice, but you get used to it." "Sort of." He nodded slowly. "You stop expecting anything from anyone. Stop letting people in." I looked at him. "You, too." He met my eyes. "Yeah." There was a moment, a real one of those long, quiet pauses where you realize someone else has been sitting with the same weight you thought only you carried. "You Ever think about trying again? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He stared at his tea for a beat. Sometimes. But I think I'm more afraid of it working than failing. I raised an eyebrow. Why? Because if it works, it means you were wrong to give up. It means you have to admit you wanted love again. That hit something deep inside me. I didn't have a reply. He noticed the look on my face and chuckled softly. Sorry. That got dark. No, I said. It got honest. He smiled again, this time genuinely. It was the kind of smile that reached all the way to his eyes and made the space around us feel warmer. Then I took a bite of my toast and made a face. Burnt again. I swear I've made toast every day for 2 weeks and I still can't get it right. Jordan snorted. Is it your toaster, or are you just cursed? Probably both. This house is where toast comes to die. We both burst into laughter, real, loud, no holding back, laughter that echoed in the kitchen. It was ridiculous. It was dumb. But in that moment, I felt more alive than I had in months. As the laughter faded into quiet chuckles, I looked across the table at him. His head was tilted back slightly, eyes soft, the rain still tapping behind him. The man who had entered my house as a stranger wasn't one anymore. I didn't say it out loud, not yet, but the words echoed in my head. He didn't feel like a stranger anymore. The laughter faded, and for a moment, we just sat in the glow of it. Our plates half empty, our mugs cooling, the sound of the rain steady and rhythmic against the windows. Jordan leaned back slightly in his chair, arms crossed, a soft smile still tugging at his lips. Then the lights flickered, twice, once, then again before going out completely. We both froze. I glanced at the ceiling like maybe the answer was hiding there. Well, that's not ominous at all. Jordan chuckled softly. Power lines probably down. Storms getting heavier. Outside, the rain was no longer just a quiet tap. It was a full-body rhythm now, like the sky itself had something to say. A low rumble of thunder followed, distant, but present. I stood slowly and fumbled for the drawer near the fridge. I have candles somewhere in here. Jordan took out his flashlight, casting a soft beam of light as I rummaged. The drawer stuck for a second, then gave way, and I found 2 short pillar candles and a box of matches. We lit them, setting one on the table and the other on the counter. The small flames didn't brighten the room much, but they softened the edges, made everything feel warmer, closer. I pulled a blanket off the back of the couch and tossed another to Jordan. Couch? I asked. He glanced at it, then at the floor. Actually, you mind the floor? I think I need something solid tonight. Not at all. I spread out the blankets on the hardwood, added 2 pillows from the couch, and we both sank down, shoulders just inches apart. The room hummed with quiet. Outside, rain tapped like fingers on glass. Inside, our breathing fell into sync. Jordan sat with his legs stretched out, his back resting against the cabinet. I mirrored him, the edge of my blanket brushing his. It wasn't cold, but I found myself pulling it closer anyway, as if it could protect me from more than just the draft. We didn't speak for a while, just listened. Then he said quietly, I miss this. I looked at him. What? This. The quiet that isn't lonely. The feeling that someone's here, really here. Not out of obligation. Not out of habit. Just presence. I swallowed. Yeah. I miss that, too. He turned his head slightly. What do you miss the most? It took me a minute to answer. I think I miss the little things. A hand brushing against mine while reaching for the same mug. The sound of someone else's shower in the morning. Sitting on the couch and not having to fill the silence. Jordan nodded slowly. I miss touch. Not sex, just the weight of someone leaning against me. A head on my shoulder. A hand on my arm. My breath caught slightly. He turned to me. Sorry. That too much? No, I said, my voice low. Not at all. There was a pause, soft, charged. Not uncomfortable, but something was shifting between us. He rested his hand on the floor between us, fingers spread, his knuckles just barely brushing mine. I didn't move. He didn't either. But the contact sent a quiet ripple through me. Not lust. Not even longing, but something more tender, like recognition. Neither of us looked directly at it.
We just sat with it. Let it be what it was.
I don't usually talk like this, he said after a while. Me neither. Feels weird. Feels honest. Another pause. The rain beat on, steady and soothing. One of the candles flickered slightly, casting a shifting shadow across his jawline. I turned to face him more fully. You're different than I expected. Cop stereotype, not living up to the hype. He grinned. You're not what I expected anyone to be tonight. His expression softened. Neither are you. There was something in his eyes, not just attraction but permission. He wasn't asking for anything. He was waiting, gently, to see if I'd meet him halfway. I felt invisible for a long time, I admitted. Like I could scream in a room and no one would look up. But tonight, for the first time in forever, I feel like someone sees me. He nodded slowly. I do. His fingers moved slightly, just enough to brush mine with intention. I turned my hand, letting our palms meet. His grip was slow, deliberate. Not tight, just real. The warmth of it spread through my chest like a match catching fire.
We sat like that.
Fingers intertwined on the floor. Bodies close. The storm a cocoon around us. The silence wasn't hollow anymore. It was full of possibility, of something fragile and hopeful. I turned to him, my voice barely more than a breath. I don't want to be alone tonight. His eyes met mine, steady and kind. Then don't be. After those words, something inside me settled. It wasn't a dramatic shift, more like a quiet exhale. I hadn't realized I'd been holding it in for years. Jordan's hand was still in mine as we sat there on the floor, the candlelight flickering between us, the storm playing its lullaby against the windows. Neither of us moved quickly. Nothing about this was rushed. Let's move to the couch, I said after a long pause, voice low. It's softer. And the floor's less poetic the longer you sit on it. He chuckled, that same soft, rumbly sound I was starting to recognize as his. Lead the way. We stood, still quiet, and I grabbed the larger blanket from the back of the couch. He sat down first, his arm resting along the backrest, waiting, not assuming, just open. I joined him, pulling the blanket over both of us. We sat close, not pressed together yet, but enough that I could feel the heat of his arm along mine. Outside, the rain showed no signs of stopping, and I was glad. It felt like it had carved out this moment just for us. The room glowed amber from the candle on the table, and for a while, we just watched the patterns of water race down the window. You always this calm? I asked softly. He smiled faintly.
No.
I just fake it. Well, I think I needed calm more than anything tonight. I could tell, he said, turning slightly to look at me. When our eyes met, the quiet between us shifted. Not awkward, not hesitant, just full of the weight of everything unsaid. I saw the way his gaze dipped to my mouth, just for a second. Not possessive, curious, hopeful. My breath caught. I leaned in just slightly, not out of boldness, but instinct.
He met me halfway.
The kiss was tentative, gentle, a question asked in silence. His lips were warm, soft, unsure at first, not the kiss of someone trying to impress. The kiss of someone who hadn't been held in a long time. I closed my eyes and let myself melt into it. And when he kissed me again, it was deeper. Not rushed, but more certain. Like he had made a choice. Like we both had. I reached up and rested my hand on his jaw, feeling the faint stubble under my palm. His fingers curled around my waist, anchoring me to the moment. No one had touched me like that in ages, not with hunger, but with care. When we finally pulled apart, I didn't move far, just rested my forehead lightly against his. I didn't expect this, I whispered.
Me neither, he said.
But I'm not sorry. Not even a little, he smiled. Not even close. We sat like that. Heads close, bodies wrapped in shared warmth. The blanket barely covered us now, but I didn't care. It wasn't the fabric that kept the cold out. It was him. The room smelled faintly of candle wax, rain, and something deeper, the quiet, honest scent of skin and comfort. He pulled me into him gently, one arm around my shoulder, the other resting across my chest. My head found its place on his chest, the rhythm of his heartbeat steady and grounding. I didn't remember the last time I'd felt that safe. He didn't speak. Neither did I. There was no need to explain or define what was happening. It just was. His fingers moved slowly against my arm, tracing nothing in particular, just being there, present. "I don't know what this is," I murmured. He tightened his arm around me slightly. "It doesn't have to be anything tonight. It's just this. This is nice." It is. Outside, the storm finally began to taper off, the thunder fading into distant rumbles, like someone closing a door far away. The room grew even quieter, but not empty. I let my eyes close, my ear pressed to his chest. Every breath he took vibrated through me. Every heartbeat echoed like a lullaby. I should have felt nervous, or overwhelmed, or unsure. But I didn't. I just felt held. And in that moment, that was everything. As the candlelight danced across the walls and the last of the storm subsided outside, I drifted off to sleep with my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, slow and steady beneath my ear. Morning came slowly like a secret. Soft golden light filtered through the slats of the blinds, casting long stripes across the living room floor and over the blanket draped across the two of us. I woke first. Jordan was still asleep beside me, one arm draped loosely across my waist, his chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm of someone truly at rest. His face looked younger like this, softer, like the badge and uniform had melted off sometime in the night, leaving only the man beneath. I lay there quietly, eyes open, not wanting to move.
Not yet.
The calm in the room felt sacred, like something that could disappear if I breathed too loudly. I stared up at the ceiling and listened, not just to the birds chirping outside, or the distant hum of a neighbor's lawn mower starting up, but to what was not there. No fear, no loneliness, no static in my chest. It was strange how quickly things could change. One night ago, I had been clutching my phone, scared of every shadow. Now I was wrapped in a blanket with a man I barely knew, and yet trusted more than I trusted anyone in a long time, and not because he had a badge, but because he stayed. Because he didn't fill the silence with empty words. Because he saw me and didn't look away. Jordan stirred beside me, brow furrowing slightly as he shifted. Then his eyes blinked open, soft, slow, unfocused. "Hey," I whispered. He looked at me, then out the window. A slow smile tugged at his lips. "It's morning." "Afraid so." He stretched his neck and let out a small groan. "I haven't slept that well in years." "Honestly, ouch. Isn't that comfortable?" I teased. "It's not the couch," he said. His voice was rough with sleep, but full of something warmer. "It's the company." I felt myself blush. Not hard, just enough to warm my face. I sat up slowly, the blanket falling to my lap, and ran a hand through my hair. "You want some coffee? I think we both earned it." He nodded. "Only if you promise not to burn the toast this time." I grinned. No promises. We moved easily around each other in the kitchen, like we'd done this a dozen times. I brewed the coffee. He popped the bread in the toaster and watched it like it might betray us. "It's not black yet," he said, triumphant, when it popped up. "Wow," I said, mock serious. "You're really going to brag about not burning toast?" He poured the coffee and handed me a mug. "Listen, when you work night shifts, you learn to celebrate the small victories." We sat at the kitchen table again, this time side by side, legs brushing under the table. Everything felt easy, natural, like there was nothing to hide behind anymore. "You off duty today?" I asked, sipping my coffee. He nodded.
Yeah.
Technically, I wasn't even supposed to stay after the call last night. "Oh." I raised an eyebrow. "So, you broke the rules for me?" He leaned back and smirked. "Maybe." I smirked back. "Reckless. Dangerous. Romantic." He corrected. There was that pause again. The one that used to feel heavy but now just felt full. I could feel something building between us again. But it wasn't pressure. It was possibility. You planning to head out soon? I asked. He looked down at his mug, then at me. Do you want me to? I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. The fact that he asked, not assuming, not fishing, just asking, meant everything. I think I'd like you to stay a little longer, I said, my voice soft. He smiled. Then I will. We sat there for a while longer, eating toast that was perfectly golden and sipping coffee that had cooled just enough to drink without flinching. The sunlight warmed the room, casting golden hues across the counter and making the candle from last night look like a relic from another time. Eventually, I leaned back in my chair and looked at him. Really looked at the uniform, the eyes, the quiet, and something else. Something that didn't wear a badge or carry a flashlight or drive a squad car. Something gentle, present. Something that reminded me that maybe I hadn't been broken. Just waiting. Waiting for someone who would knock on my door and not just walk in, but stay. Maybe he came to protect me. Or maybe he came because I was finally ready to be seen again. The rain was gone by afternoon, replaced by the kind of stillness that follows a storm. The world washed clean and quietly humming. Clouds drifted like soft cotton overhead, and the air smelled like damp earth and blooming grass. Felt like a different day entirely. Or maybe I was just different. Jordan and I decided to go for a walk. It wasn't planned or dramatic, just a natural extension of the morning. We needed the air. We needed the quiet togetherness that only comes from movement without expectation. The neighborhood was peaceful. Its usual silence now tinged with birdsong and the occasional bark of a dog 2 houses down. Lawns shimmered with leftover dew, and puddles reflected pieces of sky. We walked side by side, our shoulders brushing now and then, and neither of us pulled away. You know, he said, hands tucked into his jacket pockets. I've been doing this job for almost a decade. I've seen a lot of things, bad things, weird things. But nights like last night don't happen. I glanced at him. You mean a guy inviting you in and giving you burnt toast? He grinned. Exactly. Ruined my standards forever. We both laughed, light and genuine, and then it faded into a softer rhythm, like waves pulling back from shore. I've kept to myself for a long time, he said, gaze focused ahead. Too long, probably. After my brother died, I just stopped opening up, to friends, to family, to dating. I stayed quiet listening. It wasn't like I didn't want connection, he continued. I just convinced myself I didn't deserve it, or that I'd mess it up. So, I buried myself in work. Let people think I was fine. Let myself believe it, too. I nodded slowly. I did something similar after the breakup. Told myself I needed space, a clean slate. But I think I was just afraid of being close to anyone again, because closeness meant giving someone the power to hurt me. He looked at me, eyes soft. But you still let me in. You stayed, I replied. That mattered. We turned a corner and walked along a narrow path that curved behind a small park. The trees rustled gently overhead, their leaves dripping softly from last night's rain. I used to think love only came once, I said after a moment. Like if you lost it, that was it. You'd get versions of it, maybe, but never the real thing again. Jordan's step slowed. Do you still believe that? I shook my head.
No.
Not today. We stopped beneath a tall oak tree, its branches reaching wide like arms stretched in embrace. He turned to face me fully, searching my face for something. Not answers. Just presence. Then he kissed me. This time it wasn't tentative. It wasn't cautious or afraid. It was full, not with desperation, but with hope. His hands found my face. Mine found his chest. And the world seemed to narrow to just the warmth of his lips and the steady grounding of his body against mine. When we pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his and smiled. I think you were the break-in I needed, I murmured. He laughed quietly. Best illegal entry I've ever made. We lingered like that, not rushing to fill the silence, just breathing the same air. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small notepad. He scribbled something, tore it off, and handed it to me, his name, his personal number.
Call me, he said.
Even if there's no emergency. I took the paper, folded it carefully, and tucked it into my back pocket. I think I already did. I said softly. We stood there another minute, then began walking back toward my house. The same sidewalk, the same trees, the same doors, but none of it felt the same. When we reached the porch, he paused. I should go change and check in at the station. Let them know I'm still alive and well-fed. Burnt toast and all, I replied. He smiled, and we stood facing each other again. He reached out and squeezed my hand gently. I'll call you later. I'll answer, I said. And with one last glance, one last soft smile, he turned and walked down the steps. I watched him go, not with sadness, not with fear, but with a quiet certainty that something had begun. He wasn't a stranger anymore. He was someone I let in and who stayed. As I stood there on the porch, watching him disappear around the corner, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning.